Hi everyone, happy Friday. Thank goodness we finally made it through this very hectic week. So I'm here today to talk to you a little bit about what your homework is for the weekend, what we have coming up. So the first thing I want to say is if you haven't done your assignment for today, that's due at noon, and the extra credit for the midterm is due tonight at midnight. So you still have some time to ask me questions if you have any, and that will just be due tonight. So your homework for the weekend is going to be to read through 4G1 in your text and vocab. Looks like this. If you, for some reason, don't have your text and vocab book with you, if it was left in your dorm and you're getting it mailed to you, or for some reason you just don't have access, let me know. I can send you a scan of these pages at least, so you have that to work on. Great. So 4G1 is what you're going to read for the weekend, and once you've read through it once, there's a worksheet posted on Blackboard that you're going to work through with the text. So hopefully this worksheet will give you some support and guidance as you read through. Make sure you're understanding the Latin grammar and also the context of the story for better understanding overall. So today I'm just going to give you some background information so that you have kind of a way to contextualize the whole story. So we've been talking a lot about Verres and Cicero for about the last month. All of our readings have had to do with these two figures. So Verres was a provincial governor in Sicily, and Cicero is prosecuting him. This is early in Cicero's career. He became very famous later, but this specific case takes place in 70 BC. So Cicero is about 10 years into his political career, hasn't really made a name for himself yet, but this is one of the cases that kind of puts him on the map as a famous orator. So we've talked about different things that Verres did that got him accused of extortion in Sicily. For instance, he stole those cups of Diodorus, or he tried to. He was constantly drinking on the beach. He let pirates into Sicily. And he just was a generally not good guy to his provincial peoples. So in this specific text, 4G1, we're talking about Verres' father. So Cicero is giving this speech to the judges, but in this case he's talking about what would happen if Verres' father was judging this case. And his argument is that even Verres' father would have to judge Verres as guilty. There's just no other way around it. All of the crimes he has committed are so clearly against the Roman character that no one could believe he was innocent. So that's the first half of this speech, and that's pretty interesting, just the idea of an upright Roman would charge even his own son if he saw all of these crimes. The second half of this passage that you're going to read, though, is even more interesting, because it talks about Roman citizenship and what it means to be a Roman and what protections they have. So if you have done the extra credit for tonight, or even if you haven't, there's a passage a little bit earlier in chapter 4 that talks about Gavius, who was a man that Verres charged and brought into court. But even as Gavius was yelling, "I am a Roman citizen, civis Romanus sum," Verres didn't stop punishing him. He still had him stripped, beaten, and put on a cross until he was dead. And all of these things would have been against what a Roman citizenship should allow for the protection of. So in ancient Rome, if you were a Roman citizen, you had protection specifically of your body. So you couldn't be punished in a corporal way. You couldn't be beaten, you couldn't be stripped, you couldn't be killed in that sort of way unless it was allowed by the Senate, and you definitely couldn't be put on a cross, because that was one of the crimes reserved for the punishments reserved for the worst crimes. So generally slaves would be put on a cross if it was judged that they had done some horrible crime, or foreigners, but never Roman citizens. So here, Gavius is yelling, "I'm a Roman citizen," and Verres still does all of these things to him. So this was very against the idea of Roman citizenship that the Romans themselves had. There's also the idea that this Roman citizenship should protect Roman citizens when they went out into the empire. So at this time, Rome was holding power in most of the Mediterranean and a little bit beyond, depending on where it was. They weren't quite the extent that later the empire spanned to, but it was still pretty large. And the idea was that if you were a Roman citizen, you could travel anywhere in that empire and you were safe, you were protected. No one could kill or beat or strip you. So the fact that Varys has now done all of that to a Roman citizen who is professing his citizenship is very shocking and would put fear into the Romans who are listening to this speech. Because if they lost that idea of protection that their citizenship should give them, then how are they to travel for trade or pleasure or visiting family and friends? All of that would be taken away from them. So Cicero is accusing Varys of extortion in Sicily specifically, but in this passage, he's talking just about Roman citizenship and what that meant to the Romans. So that's what makes this passage so interesting and worth reading, because we don't always get glimpses into what the Romans thought of themselves and how they pictured their own citizenship, but this passage really gives us a good idea of the protections they believed that it held for them, and what would happen if those protections were taken away, and how that made them afraid, and therefore why they would be more willing to prosecute Varys. So if you're wondering what happens to Varys in the end here, he is advised by his own lawyer that he should go into exile voluntarily, accept the charges, because no one would actually believe he was innocent. Cicero did that good of a job. And probably there were a bunch of people who came back to Rome from Sicily and kind of told the others what had happened anyway. So, super interesting reading. We'll finish up the Varys scandal as it is next week with 4H, but at least you get to read this very exciting part over the weekend. So, enjoy your reading, make sure you do the worksheet, and if you have any questions, as always, please feel free to email me, post on the discussion board, and I will see you all next week. All right, have a great weekend.